Video we'll look at leisure question 2. Now this is always going to be a which source is more reliable to a historian question. Now it's 6 marks, which means it should take 6 minutes and it's 3 paragraphs in length. You are asked to evaluate the reliability of these sources. In terms of reliability, we think about accuracy and purpose. So if it's accurate, if it matches what you know, then it's more likely to be reliable. And if the purpose is for something like education or information, it's going to be more reliable than if the purpose was to entertain, for example. But you must discuss both sources and you must come to an overall conclusion about which is more reliable, but you must analyse both. So from that then, your layout for your paragraphs is quite straightforward. Your first and second paragraphs are where you look at the sources and you'll be analysing content, authorship and context. And then finally, you will need another paragraph for your judgment, which is more reliable and why. So we'll do this one all together. Which of the sources is more reliable to a historian studying cruelty in sport and entertainment over time? So the first thing I'm going to do is my bug method. So I'm going to box my command word, which is which of the sources is more reliable. Then underline my key features, which are cruelty in sport and the sources. And then I'm finally going to glare at the hints, and there is a lot of them. For this, so you've got the sources themselves, you've got their authorship, which is the bit underneath in brackets, and of course you've got the marks. So source D reads, then the boar bust forward, bounded at the lord, so that beast and hunter both went bundling into white water, and the swine came off worst, because the moment they clashed the man found his mark, knifing the boar's neck, nailing his prey, hammering it to the hilt, bursting the hog's heart. Screaming, it was swept downstream and almost slipping beneath. At least 100 hounds latch on with tearing teeth. Then, dragged to drier ground, the dogs complete its death. So that's a translation from the 14th century poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, describing a hunt. And Source E is a modern newspaper in 2006 commentating on the continuation of fox hunting after its banning by Parliament in 2005. And there's quite a visual image on the front of that source. So in terms of context, you need to be thinking about cruel sports over time. So hunting's popular with rich, but it's essential with the poor, particularly during the medieval era, which is where Source D is from. You should be able to tell me a bit about cruel sports. What is fox hunting? What is hunting? Why were they done? And the fact that fox hunting is banned in 2005, which if you read the authorship of Source E, you would see. Now, for Source D, I know that it matches my own knowledge. I know that that is what happens in a hunt. I know they hunt hogs and they use dogs. It's a translation, so there might be potential inaccuracies. However, I find that quite unlikely. And it's a poem, so it's not a real event that historically happened, but it's still likely based on them. The author of this poem probably would have gone on these hunts himself, and that's why he's able to talk about them. So, in terms of assessing reliability, even though this particular event may not necessarily have happened, I, as a historian, believe that it is based on other events that did happen. So I find Source D fairly reliable. Now with Source E, it's a regional newspaper. It suggests fox hunting is still a problem. Now it's a regional newspaper, so it's not a national newspaper like the Daily Mail or the Sun that everyone reads. This is only for people in Leicester. So, if we're talking about studying cruel sport over time, this is only really useful to talk about events in Leicester. It's the year after the ban, so it's relevant, and it's a newspaper. So the purpose of this picture and this article is to sell. So maybe it's being exaggerated in order to sell more papers.
The cruel nature of sport and entertainment has changed greatly over time. In the medieval era, cruel sports such as the melee and bear baiting were enjoyed by many. However, during the Victorian era, entertainment began to become less cruel as Victorians believed this behavior to be uncivilized and barbaric. Source D is reliable to an historian because it is the earliest known poem about what a medieval hunt was like. The poem explained that hunting was cruel, violent and dangerous. However, as this poem is a translation, its accuracy may be impacted. Source D is more reliable because it gives a first-hand account of a medieval hunt and describes the masculine and violent nature of the hunt. Source D was produced in a time where cruel sport was completely normal, and animal cruelty was acceptable, so would be unlikely to hide the truth. Source E is reliable because it is a newspaper discussing the ban of the fox hunt. I know that even though fox hunting was banned, people continued to do it. Source E may not be the best source to use, as the tone of the headline makes it appear sensational, so could be exaggerated. It seems as though the newspaper objects to the fox hunt, and is therefore not being fair in their assessment. Furthermore, it is a regional newspaper and may not accurately reflect national opinion on the issue. Overall, Source D is the most reliable to a historian studying cruel sport over time because it is very accurate, as the author probably participated in it himself and the content matches my own knowledge about medieval hunts.
You're now going to see 2 practice questions and their sample answers, and there will be a mark scheme at the end. Which of the 2 sources is more reliable to a historian studying popular entertainment over time? For 6 marks. The blast of a trumpet will call thousands to the theatre to see a filthy, vulgar play performed by people and watched by people who have no morals. An hour's ringing of a church bell would only bring 100 God-fearing, decent people to a sermon. And that's from a public sermon delivered by the Reverend John Stockwood, a Protestant preacher in 1578. They don't pay their sixpences and shillings at a music hall to hear the Salvation Army. If I was to try and sing highly moral songs, they would throw beer bottles and mugs at me. The audiences want vulgarity. It is as simple as that. I can't help it if people want to turn and twist my meanings. From an interview from the New York Times Telegraph by Marie Lloyd, a British music hall performer in 1897. Which of the 2 sources is more reliable to a historian studying cruelty in sport over time? It sickens me to see an innocent animal set upon by the hounds. It is lawful and godly to slay animals for our pastimes and vain pleasures. Is it Christian to buy up food and feed hounds for the hunt when the poor starve? And that's by Philip Stubbs, a Puritan preacher writing in the Anatomy of Abuses in 1583. To smash cruelly into an opponent and knock him over unnecessarily and perhaps savagely is clearly a brutality, but it appears to be permitted in the rules. You shall see these footballers returning home as if from a pitched battle, with bloody heads, broken bones and bruising. From an article in The Lancet, which is a specialist medical journal, entitled The Perils of Football, written in 1894.
The way that people have been entertained has changed a lot over time. In the Elizabethan era, the most popular form of entertainment was the theatre, which competed with the requirement for people to go to Elizabeth's new church under the Act of Uniformity. By the late Victorian era, people liked to go to glee clubs and music halls. Source D is written by a Protestant preacher, who would want people to go to church and not the theatre, as it was his job to ensure church attendance. John Stockwood clearly thinks the theatre is not a good form of entertainment. Source E is from Marie Lloyd, a famous music hall singer who explains that people would rather pay to listen to a tongue-in-cheek song than listen to moral music for free. It was her job to be popular and sing songs that would earn her money. Source E is more reliable to an historian studying popular entertainment over time, as it clearly shows that entertainment was incredibly important, as people were willing to pay money to watch things that appealed to them. Marie Lloyd explains that popular entertainment has changed greatly over time, and that people will pay good money to be entertained. In the Elizabethan era there were few affordable options of entertainment, and John Stockwood used the importance of religion to demote the theatre. Marie Lloyd is being very honest about her intentions, while John Stockwood is motivated by his faith and Elizabeth's policies to believe that entertainment, other than the church, is not important. Source D talks about hunting and the related cruelty. In the 1500s, hunting was a source of food, but also leisure. Cruel sport at the time was a big part of society, with bear baiting, bull baiting and cockfighting all being popular pastimes. It was written by a Puritan preacher who is clearly against hunting, as he says it is not godly to slay animals for our pastimes and vain pleasures. As a Puritan, he would be against anything that God would not agree with, and wants people to spend their time in church, not out hunting. Source E discusses football in the late 19th century, where a lack of rules and regulations led to significant injuries for players. Most people worked in factories during the Industrial Revolution, and factory owners needed a healthy workforce to keep up productivity. Playing football often meant people missed work, and production fell. Source E is written by a specialist medical journal to warn people of the perils of football. We are uncertain, but perhaps the article went on to explain that with more rules, football could become safer and the cruel element is no longer needed. Source E is more reliable to an historian studying cruel sport over time, as it shows not only the popularity of cruel sport, but the impact it had on participants. Source E is also reliable as it was written by a medical journal, and its purpose was to ensure the safety and well-being of players. Source E also shows the change over time, where rules and regulations were slowly introduced to help make sure cruel sport became safer.